Hello, I'm Eva, and I would like to welcome you to The Charm of It, a podcast for knitters who share my fascination with the nitty-gritty details of our craft. This is going to be a normal episode with lots of different segments that include a yarn review, a book review, brief discussion of my works in progress, one knits in the wild photo because woohoo, autumn has arrived and I can wear wool again. And finally, for my topic, I'll be discussing my completely idiosyncratic sweater preferences and a few modifications that are very easy to make to existing sweater patterns in case you find one that you fall in love with, but there's one or two details that you would change. If you're a new viewer, welcome. Thank you so much for giving me a try. This is Thistle, one of my co-hosts. The other one is a cat named Moth, and she might pop over later. Oh, I know. To returning viewers, it's so nice to see you again. I want to say thank you to everyone who left feedback about my format experiments, and it just means the world to me, all of those encouraging comments, and then just people on Instagram and Ravelry reaching out. I started this podcast in order to create a little virtual online knitting community, and it has succeeded beyond my wildest expectations, and that's thanks to the generosity of all of you for taking the time to leave comments and become my friends. So thank you to all returning viewers. I don't have any finished objects this week. And I'm not wearing a hand knit sweater. I'm wearing a thrifted sweater. I really need to knit a couple neutral cardigans. I've realized that I have my white cardigan, the fisherman one, but that's out of sport weight yarn, and so I need a one or two in fingering weight. Anyway, no finished objects this week. So we will, before I forget, I do have a couple administrative things. The Pocket Menagerie craft along is still going on, and that'll be going on for quite a while. All you need to do is knit a softie or crochet or craft with your hands a fiber related softie that can fit in a pocket. And you will be I just enjoy that thread because everything is adorable. But at the end of it, I will draw a winner to receive a pattern of their choice from a couple of my favorite softie designers. So if you're interested in that, I know I'm running it for a long time in case you want to knit it or create it as a Christmas gift. And on a shorter scale, I'm doing a giveaway sponsored by Mountain Meadow, which is a yarn company that is based in Wyoming, and they are all about local, sustainable, ethical yarn. And they are offering 2 skeins in the winner's choice of colors. And they'll ship it out. All you have to do worldwide is go to my Ravelry thread and tell me about a yarn whose manufacturing process, there's Moth, you enjoy or admire in some way. And that thread is turning out to be a really great resource. So be sure to have a peek at it if you're also interested in that kind of yarn. Sorry, Moth is stuck. Okay, we're good. Needs to trim her nails. So that giveaway is going until October 15th. And as always, you do not have to be a member of my group. I'm fine with you leaving a comment as a guest poster. I apologize to people who leave comments on YouTube and aren't Ravelry members. The reason why I do it on Ravelry is because it's much easier for me to get the numbers for the giveaway and to just keep track of everything. So you do have to have a Ravelry account, unfortunately. Okay, so since I do not have any finished objects, I will go ahead and answer a question from Diane, who is Akabori on Ravelry, and she was asking about small diameter knitting when you're doing stranded color work. She shares my preference for double pointed needles when doing regular small diameter knitting, and we're basically the same as far as it goes. Double pointed needles, and then much lower down is 2 circs, and then magic loop. I don't hate magic loop, but it drives me nuts having to pull that cable around all the time. So she was asking, because it's more difficult to strand when you're on DPNs, what I like to do for that, and also if I've ever tried the very small diameter circular needles. I have tried them for one project, and it was a stranded project. I did a pair of colorwork socks for a friend who has larger feet than me, so I could use 9-inch diameter needles. My own feet are 8.5 inches, and you want 10% negative ease with socks, so a 9-inch circular needle is too big for socks for me. But I really loved it. It did take me a little bit to adjust to it, and I would not want to, like, it will never replace DPNs for me, but for stranded work, oh my gosh, those socks flew. I could just go around and around. I didn't have any issues trying to get the float around the corner with the DPNs. So if you are doing small diameter knitting that is 9 inches or larger, I would definitely recommend those. I think I have Chiagu's. I was kindly sent them by a podcast viewer so that I could try them out. I'll double check and put that in the show notes, but I thought they were perfect as far as the length goes and the tips. I should say that when I'm using circular needles in general, I prefer the 3.5-inch tips to the 5-inch tips. So, I don't know, something about my knitting, I tend to like the shorter length needles anyway. So that might have something to bear on that. But so when I do color work that does not fit within those parameters, and I've only used those for one project just because most of the stuff I knit won't work on them, I vary. If I'm doing worsted weight like mittens, I find that double pointed needles work fine for that. It's easier to strand, for me at least, worsted weight because the yarn is thicker, so it's just easier to catch the yarn. What I do is this is why I'm doing this motion, whenever I switch needles, I catch the float with my middle finger in that corner so that it doesn't tighten up when I'm doing the first couple stitches. So like that. I don't know if that made sense. And then with finer yarn, I usually just do 2 circs. I have an interchangeable set of fine gauge needles. And so for a little bit, I thought I had to do magic loop, and that's how I did my sister's Van Gogh mitts, pretty sure. But then I've realized that, of course, since they're interchangeable, I can make 2 circular needles and just have the size that I'm actually using on one of the tips and have a smaller size on the other end. And since when you're doing 2 circulars, you're always using the same tip to knit off. Does that make sense? So I should be able to make 2 circular needles out of my interchangeable set, even though I only have 1 set of needles in each size. So that's what I'm going to do for the future, because I find it much easier to just pick up the 2 needles with the circ and start knitting that way than do the magic loop thing where you have to thread it around. But yeah, honestly, I'm working on just getting better with stranding with double pointed needles because I just find it so much less fiddly to knit on double pointed needles in general. And so what I am also experimenting with, like what I did for my Hare and the Moon mittens, which were worsted weight, is instead of using 4, which is what I usually do, I used 3. And so the side that is going to be more visible for mittens, this, I did on 1 needle so that I didn't have to worry about having any wonkiness in the middle. And then for the palm, I did it on 2 needles. Usually I prefer 4 needles, having my knitting on 4 needles and using a 5th to knit around for double pointed needles because I just find it more comfortable the way the needles sit. However, that's another option for color work if you're wanting to avoid that strain. So yeah, I guess that would be my rambling answer. I hope that it was useful in some way. I am really excited to have the small circular for sleeves because I have a completely stranded sweater in my queue, and it'll be so nice to be able to do the sleeves on something that does not require any fiddliness. Hello again. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do the new format, like separating the works in progress out into their own video and how much detail I should go into on these long episodes. So I'm going to be quite brief in this episode, and let me know how you feel about that. So I guess I'll do my sister sweater first because it's on top. This is my Busy Sisterhood cardigan that I'm knitting for my sister, and I'm mashing up a few patterns, and I'm knitting it out of Knit 1 Crochet 2 Cosette, which is a silk cotton blend yarn because she lives in South Texas. And it's going to be a slouchy, comfy sweater. I finished the first sleeve. I can't remember where I was in the sleeve when I showed you last. And then I needed to wind up another ball of yarn, and I just didn't do that for a week because I found I really don't like having 5 projects on the go at once. I like having 4, or at least I don't like having 5 when 2 of them are English style and they're both in navy blue yarn. It felt too repetitive. So I'll talk more about this in a minute, but basically I ignored this cardigan, and instead I was working on my Distant Shores scarf. And this is one of those scarves where you knit to the midpoint and then you start at the other end and knit to the other midpoint, and I have 2 skeins of yarn. So I finished the first skein of yarn, and then I balled up the new yarn and cast on for the second sleeve. As you can see, I'm still working on the cuff. I cannot wait to get to the plain stockinette. I'm knitting this English style. Oh my gosh, I completely understand why English knitters don't like ribbing. When I do ribbing continental style, it's really barely more effort than stockinette. I mean, I don't even really notice. Whereas with this, oh my gosh, constantly bringing the yarn back and forth. So once I get to the stockinette, it should go quite quickly. I am not going to start the second half of the scarf until I finish this second sleeve, because I really want to finish this up. Mainly because I don't want to be knitting with plant fibers during the cold weather. I want to get all of my wool worth it. My sister doesn't put any pressure on me as far as time goes. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing the yoke, because I always enjoy doing the parts of knitting where you have to think about it a little, but then it all comes together and it's like magic. So I think I'll be doing the saddle shoulder directions from Gudrun Johnston's Little Waves sweater, which I did in the spring, and it was so cool how it came together. So Distant Shores scarf is coming along. If you watched my last episode, I was complaining about this, but all I needed to do was put the sweater sleeve aside, and once this became my main, like, simple project, it just flew. I was really enjoying it, enjoying knitting with the yarn, which is Mountain Meadows Hannah Targhee. So bouncy. And yeah, I'm just really happy with it. So this is unblocked. I think I measured it, and it's 32 inches, so almost 3 feet, almost a meter unblocked. And this will be half the scarf. So hopefully I won't have to block it too hard. But yeah, once you get done with the decorative part, it's just a 2-row repeat. And once I had, like, I memorized it, but it took a little longer for my fingers to get used to the right side row. The wrong side row is just purling. But once my fingers had that down, it ended up very enjoyable. So now I have hope that I will become a scarf/stole knitter after all. I'm trying to not talk too much about it so that these episodes are more brief. Let's see. My Miss Lemon jumper is just coming along. Nothing to say about that, except switching to the size zeros instead of the 000s has made it seem like it's flying. I actually thought that I had used the wrong size needle because it seems so much bigger. Apparently my camera doesn't want to focus today, but that is very true to color. I love this. It's the Opal Heather of Knit Picks Shadow Lace Merino. So I don't have to do any shaping. I'm just knitting until I hit the armholes. I apologize for speeding up my voice. I'm not sure why I did that. I think because lately everything seems like it's been taking forever, but hopefully with the new format I'll be able to balance things better. This is the Most Delightful Grove beret. As you can see, this is the closest thing I have to a finished object. It's with the Alana Dacos Pressed Leaves pattern. I really love her aesthetic. And it's out of Monosil Uruguay Silk Blend, which is 70% merino, 30% silk. And it's a single ply, and I just love how it's working up in the twisted stitches. It's the Coal colorway, which is a gray. And it'll be nice to have a dressier gray hat. So, woo. I'll block it into more of a beret. So I cast this on because my hands like it when I have a variety of yarn weights, and all of the other ones were finer. And so because, of course, a hat on DK weight yarn is going to work up quickly, I've been doing fewer stitches in each little session that I alternate on this hat than on my other bigger projects, just to make it last a little longer. And I think that that's been working really well. I've also decided to just stop worrying about how many knitted hats I own, and just enjoy them. I might talk more about that in a future topic segment. And then my last work in progress is my herbarium vest, which I'm doing for the Fruity Knitting Fair Isle Garment Cow. And I'm using birthday yarn of Alice Starmore Hebridean 2-ply, and I'm designing it myself. I'm using Ann Budd's basic vest pattern, kind of, just to give myself an idea, but I'm going to do a round neck instead of a V-neck. So I've made quite a bit of progress, as you can see. I have finished the in the round part, so I've split for the front and back yoke, and I decided to knit them flat instead of steeking because I'd done so much flat swatching that my hands had gotten very used to it. This will come up. And since I've never knit a vest before, this way I can try it on and make decisions based that way. When you steek, you can't try it on until you cut it open. So I just want to leave myself more of an option for frogging. I really love how it's turning out. I'm about to start doing the crew neck shaping on this because I want enough space to have corrugated ribbing around the neck and still show my collarbone. And I thought it would be interesting for you to compare and contrast the swatch, which has some brighter colors in it, with the colors that I actually decided to do, the order that I actually decided to do. I don't know if you can tell, but in my opinion, these colors do that glowy thing at the center, and these colors don't. They do something different, which is lovely in its own right, but not what I wanted. So, yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that. I have been knitting on this a little more than I should have, and so I'm quite sore in my knitting regions today, like my elbows and stuff, so I need to get much stricter with myself about that. And this will go really well under pretty much all of the blazers in my closet. Of course, I keep talking about how autumn has come, and I realize that if you're in Australia or New Zealand or most of South America and Southern Africa, well, most of Southern Africa. Anyway, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, of course, spring has arrived, not autumn. So I apologize for my Northern Hemisphere bias. I'm just so excited that it's not hot anymore. Oh my gosh. So I just want to state in advance that these are just my completely personal sweater preferences. There's no like scientific study or basis for this. It's just my experience. I am not the most, it's not like I've knit a bajillion sweaters. I think with the ones currently on my needles, they make 15. So that means that I've finished 12, including a little baby sweater and a baby vest. So it makes what, 10 adult size sweaters. And there are things that I have not tried yet too, so I just want to put that disclaimer out there. But I just thought I would share how I've decided, like what I've decided are my default preferences, because a few months ago I started talking about like my favorite cast-ons, my favorite bind-offs, that kind of thing. So these would be, I guess, my favorite sweater constructions. First of all, bottom up. That's not even a contest for me. I find it much easier to try on sweaters that I'm knitting from the bottom up and assess them for fit. I was trying on my vest the other day. I don't understand why people think only a top-down sweater can be tried on. That totally confuses me, because all you do with the bottom up is just pull it over your head. I don't know. Anyway, I've actually found when I try to do top-down sweaters that the fact that there's a yoke and no body yet means that the yoke always poofs up a bit, And so I find it more difficult to assess fit with a top-down sweater. Also well, I've knit 3 top-down sweaters. 2 of them are seamless and 1 is in pieces. The 2 seamless ones both have a little bit of poof right here. And of course, when you've knit it top down and then you find that the yoke has a little bit of whatever going on, in order to fix that, you would have to rip out the whole sweater. So for me, bottom up is definitely the way to go. If I'm having fitting problems, it's always going to be in the yoke, and so it's easier for me to just be able to rip that back right away. And I also just enjoy decreasing more than increasing. I told you this is going to be idiosyncratic. So when you're doing bottom up, you decrease for the yoke, and then you loose stitches for the sweater line or the neckline and all of that. So your project is gradually getting smaller. When you do top down, it's getting larger, and I don't know, I prefer the decreasing. If there's any kind of in pattern stuff, I find it much easier to decrease in pattern than increase. Are there any? Oh, and I was going to say the top-down cardigan that I knit was my own design, and it ended up fitting well. It's my Melusine cardigan, but I did make the armholes too long, and when I tried it on, I was like, oh, but since it was in pieces, I could just cut off the top and just like re-knit 1 or 2 rows and bind off to fix that. So it was much easier to fix the depth of that than if it was all connected and I couldn't have cut it up without other problems. But yeah, I don't know, top down, I just never seem to get that yoke right. And then there is, of course, the seamed versus seamless debate. When it comes to a cardigan, unless it's color work or something, but a regular cardigan that I'm going to be knitting flat anyway, I would rather knit it in pieces. And this is because I find it's much easier on my hands to have smaller pieces of the sweater on the needles than the whole big thing. And also, if I have to frog something, rather than having to frog everything, I just have to frog, like a smaller width piece. And then, so for cardigans, I prefer to do seamed. I don't mind mattress stitching. I actually enjoy it, mattress seaming. So that's a non-issue for me. And even setting aside whether seams add more structure, I just find it much easier on my hands. I also really prefer knitting flat for cable projects because it's much easier to remember whether you're on the 6th row or not when you're doing flat, because then all the wrong side rows are odd. So, if you're on a right side row, you're on an even row, whereas when you're knitting in the round, it can sometimes be tricky with cables to tell whether you're 5 or 6 rows up from the cable. And the other thing that I like about doing seamed cardigans is that, and sweaters in general, is that it's cheaper as far as you can do the whole thing on one size needle. It can still be a circular needle. That's how I do all my flat knitting. I don't ever use straight needles. But since you're knitting every piece flat, one size circular needle will fit all of those pieces, somewhere I would guess between a 24 and 36 inch, depending on your size. And so you don't have to buy as many needles. When you're knitting a sweater in the round, or at least when I'm knitting a sweater in the round, I need at least 2 size needles. I need at least one for the waist so that it's small enough, and then one for the bust so that the stitches aren't super crowded on the needle. I think that was everything about seams. I prefer to pick up cardigan button bands rather than knit them in the body. I've done both, and I just I like how when you pick it up, you have more flexibility. And when you're knitting it with the body, you have to remember where to put the buttonholes, and that's just another thing to think about. So, the other thing I wanted to say, so if I'm knitting a seamed cardigan, I also prefer to knit the back piece first. And the reason, sometimes I do the sleeves first if I'm not sure of gauge, but otherwise I do the back piece first. And the reason is because it's the biggest piece. The front pieces are going to be smaller, not just because of the button band, but also because of the neckline. Usually your front neckline is going to be significantly deeper than your back neckline. And so I like to get the biggest piece out of the way first, because with the cardigan, with my Selkie Second Skin cardigan, I knit the front pieces first, and I did that because I was doing cable stuff. Anyway, but so then when I got to the back, I'm like, man, this is just taking forever because I wasn't binding off. And I do like to knit, when I'm doing the cardigan pieces, the two front pieces, I do like to knit them together, just on the same needle with 2 balls of yarn, because that way I know that they're going to be identical and I don't have to take as many notes, and if for some reason my tension is different for a day or two, it's going to be on both. So those are all of my cardigan preferences. For jumpers, I actually have not knit a jumper in pieces yet. I've only knit them in the round. I'm planning to knit one in pieces, so I'll be able to compare and contrast there, but I mean, there's nothing nicer than being able to just go around and around on like a 24-inch circular needle. You know, I don't know. I really enjoy knitting in the round too, so I don't mind doing jumpers in the round. I am going to try adding a faux seam, side seam next time, because I do find that my jumpers stretch out a little more. And I'm sure it's because of the lack of side seam. So what I am planning to do for any future sweaters that I knit in the round, I'm going to knit that bottom ribbing flat and then seam just that inch or two up, just to make sure that that band, because that's the part that you really don't want to stretch out. I mean, if it's supposed to be snug, it looks odd when it's stretched out. So that would be another thing. But yeah, I really enjoy knitting jumpers in the round, so I'm hoping that the faux side seam, Elizabeth Zimmerman style, will give me enough structure. I had one more thought on button bands too, and also, well, I guess neck bands are different. Anyway, a lot of patterns suggest you pick up at a ratio of doing 3 stitches for every 4 rows. And I much prefer doing 2 stitches for every 3 rows, which gives you fewer stitches on your needle. And I don't know if that's because I knit particularly squat, and so I'm having more rows than is usual for that stitch gauge, and that's why, but when I do 3 for 4, the band is always too big. And so then it starts to flare or get wonky. So I'm a 2 for 3 vertical picking up kind of girl. Let's see. The only other preference that I would say is really relevant is that I really like having a little more length and ease in my sleeves so that I can pull them down over my hands. And I am positive this is because I have quite short arms, and so retail sweaters, this is the usual length that the sleeves fit me on retail sweaters. And so I'm just not used to sleeves that stop here, so they feel really short to me, and then when my hands get cold, I can't pull them down. And so when I first started knitting sweaters, I knit the sleeves according to my arm length and with maybe an inch or 2 of positive ease, and that's not enough to be able to pull them down over my hands. So I prefer now to add more length and a little more positive ease, just so that it doesn't get like skin tight when I pull it down. Does that make sense? So those would be my totally quirky, that's how I approach sweaters. And then I always do short row shaping in the back. Oh my gosh, it drives me insane when the back of a sweater does not come up significantly higher than the front. And so those would be my sweater preferences. I also thought I would talk a little bit about modifications that are very easy to make to existing patterns in case you find a sweater pattern that you love, but 1 or 2 things aren't to your style. So and all of these become less easy when there's like color work or that kind of stuff. But generally, length is really easy to modify. Unless you're doing some kind of lace or color work that has like a 34 row repeat or something, and it's planned to end at a certain thing, in which case you'll have to get a little fussier. But otherwise, adding length to the body or the sleeves is really simple. For the body, of course, you just knit more. For the sleeves, you might have to do a few more decreases or increases depending on which way you're going. But as a general rule of thumb, you want your cuffs to be 2 to 3 inches bigger than your wrist. So just take your gauge and multiply by that and see what that gets you, and then you have to get from that number to whatever the number is of the pattern, if it's 3/4 or short. So that is quite simple math, and usually you want to do your increases or decreases every 6 to 8 rounds. Oh, that's another preference. I strongly prefer sleeves in the round, not flat. And the reason for that is I don't like having that seam on my arms. For some reason, I notice it more than I do on my sides. This is a retail sweater, so the seam is very fine. But given the preference, I will knit my sleeves in the round and then attach them to avoid that seam. Okay, the other thing that is a very easy modification is if a sweater is written as a V-neck, changing it to a crew neck or a scoop, super simple. All you have to do is ignore the directions that say when to start decreasing, obviously ignore that, and instead knit up to whatever depth you want minus the neckband, which is usually about an inch and a half. I apologize to anyone who doesn't use the inch system. That would be what, 3 to 5 centimeters? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, and instead you look at the total number of stitches that the V-neck is decreasing, and then for a scoop neck you would just bind off all those stitches at once. And a lot of times, honestly, I do a scoop neck style bind off where a traditional crew neck style, you bind off quite a few in the middle and then you do more gradual bind offs to get your total number. But I find that if I bind everything off at once and then I do a ribbed neckband, it turns into a circular neckband anyway, unless I'm trying to make it square and make corners. So that's just what's worked for me, but you don't have to do that. Anyway, the reason why that's really simple is even if there's a pattern, is that of course it's much easier to bind off in pattern if you're doing a bunch of stitches than decreasing by 1 or 2. So it's not quite as easy to turn a crew neck into a V-neck unless it's like a stockinette sweater or seed stitch, something with a very small repeat. Otherwise, you need to be more comfortable decreasing while maintaining pattern. But it's still pretty straightforward. Just, I wouldn't put it in the super easy category. So turning a V-neck into a crew neck or scoop neck, very simple. And changing the stitches for the cuffs and bands is very straightforward, like if you prefer a 2x2 rib or seed stitch or something like that. And if you're knitting a stockinette sweater, adding waist shaping is also very easy. All you do is decide how many stitches you need to decrease, and then I like to do, and this is totally because of Amy Herzog, it was her recommendation and I really love the result, I like to do the waist shaping in the middle as well as at the side seams. And so in that case you have usually 2 at the front, 2 at the back, and then 4 at the side seams. Does that make sense? So there's 4 places in the back that you're decreasing and 4 places on the front that you're decreasing. And so you take the total number of stitches that you want decreased and divide it by 8. And then you know how to decrease, how many decrease rounds you want at those 4 places. So that is also a very simple thing to do as long as it's a stockinette pattern. If it's got a pattern on it, then you're going to have to know how to decrease in pattern. So yeah, I hope that helps. I know that some of you really want to do modifications but aren't quite sure yet, so I thought that I would just list some of the simplest ones because I remember before I knew how to do modifications, they all just seemed really difficult. And so knowing which ones are straightforward, like any kind of neckline shaping seemed like, I don't know, witchcraft to me. So I was always in awe of the projects where people would just change it and do whatever they wanted. So I thought it might be helpful to list just the ones that are easiest to try out at the beginning to kind of personalize your sweater and make it exactly what you want. Because I don't know about you, but I am quite particular about what I'm knitting, and so it would, a lot of times when I browse the patterns on Ravelry, it's very rare for me to find a sweater that actually looks exactly like how I want it to look. So that's why I got into modifications to begin with. I hope that was a little bit of fun rambling about sweaters. I'm going to start a new segment and review some yarn. I think this will like this new format because since I didn't get really in depth with my works in progress, I wasn't constantly getting really close up to the camera, so she could just settle in. So for my yarn review, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite sweater yarns, since this is kind of a sweater themed episode, and that is Elsa wool. It is 100% Cormo wool. Cormo are a cross between some kind of sheep, I should have looked this up, and merino, and their wool is incredibly soft and velvety and bouncy and magic, basically. Yeah, I am totally in love with Cormo. And especially the Cormo that you buy at Elsa Wool. So Elsa used to have a flock of Cormo sheep. And that's what her yarn was made out of. She no longer has that flock. Instead, she buys the yarn from other sheep ranchers in the American West, but she still is in control of the yarn manufacturing process. So she works with the mill that she sends it to, and you can tell that she has very particular standards because the resulting yarn is so bouncy and it's so much fun to knit with. It's just a joy. And so if you're looking for breed-specific yarn or yarn made in the US or yarn made on like a small scale, you know, like farm to needle type yarn, then definitely this is a kind of yarn that is next to the skin soft for, I would say, most people who can wear wool. I should have had my mom try it on and see what she thinks because she's super sensitive. She can't wear almost any wool. But unless you have a wool allergy, this yarn is going to be great for you. And what I like that it's a more rustic farm yarn that's also next to the skin soft, because I really don't like wearing itchy yarn. I try, but I don't. Okay, so I have knit quite a bit out of Elsa Wool Cormo. It comes in 5 or 6 weights. It comes in a heavy lace, fingering, sport, worsted, and then I think it comes in a heavy worsted or Aran, but I'm not sure on that because I've knit with these 4. And it also comes in both woolen spun and worsted spun, which is really neat because that means that you can pick whichever spinning process you enjoy. And on her website, she says, she talks about how the different spinning has affected the yarn when you're looking to buy. It does only come in natural colors. So if you don't like wearing sheepy colors, that could be a downside. You would have to figure out how to dye it. But if you love sheepy colors, she's even offering more options than she used to. So you can get blends between the lighter fleeces and the darker fleeces in quite a large gradient. Oh my gosh, a gradient Cormo shawl would be incredible if I wore shawls. So I can't show you the lace project that I made because that was a shawl that I gave to my great-great aunt, the nonagenarian nun. And I don't have that with me, but you can see on my project page that it blocked quite well and it was very cozy and cuddly. But I will show you, this is the Hermaness hat, the worsted version, which is free by Gudrun Johnston, and it's got lace in it, so that you can see how this yarn works up in lace. It is a 2-ply, but it's also super round and bouncy. So you can see that the yarn overs, they're not incredibly open, and it's up to you whether you like this. I happen to love how this type of yarn looks in lace. I really like the contrast between the more country mouse yarn and then lace, which we think of as very dressy. And so, yeah, but there you can see for that. And this is woolen spun. This is the light gray woolen spun. I also have knit a pair of lace leggings in the worsted spun. This is the medium gray. And even though it says gray, they're really taupes because that's what color sheep are. So here it is in a all over lace pattern, the kinds of small lace patterns that are more texture than anything. And I think it looks really lovely in here. You can see the pattern more clearly, I think, than with this. And that's also partly because it's worsted instead of woolen spun, and so the worsted yarn isn't poofing up to fill in those yarn overs. I have also knit, oh, am I missing something? Well, hopefully they'll turn up. I was going to show you I knit a pair of mittens to match the hat. Oh, and this is the sport weight. They fall? Yes. Okay. So these are also in the worsted weight woolen spun, and I'm showing them to you so that you can see because these are some twisted stitches. As you can see, I just started a new segment. So that's how it looks in twisted stitches with little bobbles, and I think that that just has great definition. Of course, I knit these on smaller needles than I knit the hat on because you want mittens to be at a finer gauge. But this is also the light gray, and this was one out of one skein I got the mittens, they're flip-top mittens, and the hat. I have also knit, as regular viewers will know, cables. So this is my Selkie Second Skin cardigan, which is out of the sport weight woolen spun in the natural white cream color. This is almost too warm for my skin tone. I think that the light gray flatters me more. But it's not nearly as, like it's a cooler natural white than a lot of natural white yarns that I've seen. You can get a color card from her. I want to say it's free. Maybe it's like $1 or $2. I think it is a little bit of money because of postage, but on her website you can get color cards, and that way you can see how woolen versus worsted affects the yarn for yourself and decide which shades work for you and weight. But I love how this yarn looks in cables. And since it's woolen spun, it's not as heavy as you would expect for the amount of yarn that it went through. And finally, I have knit it in textured. This is my Guernsey-esque jumper. And this is the fingering weight woolen spun in medium gray. Come on, camera. Okay, so as you can see, because of the beautiful heathering, doing knit purl textures like this, a lot of them do get lost. If I were to knit another Guernsey jumper, I would do a worsted spun yarn like Quince & Company that was a solid color. But that way you can see the tree does show up, but a lot of the other ones get lost. And here's the back. So I think that the ribbing looks fine, and like the larger scale ones are good. And then I love how it looks in seed stitch. That's why there's seed stitch on my cable cardigan too. And here it is in plain stockinette, well, except for the faux seam. And look at how cohesive and lovely that stockinette is. Maybe. And this is also woolen spun. So as you can tell, I like this yarn. I just bought like a big box of her yarn all at once, and I've been slowly working my way through it, and now I'm pretty much out. So definitely am planning future sweaters. For me, it is a sweater yarn and like a scarf yarn. It's next to the skin because it's so soft and bouncy. Even though this sweater might not show the pattern as much as it ideally would, I love wearing this. I would rather wear this than my cashmere jumpers because it's like a velvety, woolly hug. I love it a lot. And so And I love all of my pieces. I'm just saying that, you know, there are so many yarns that I might not be able to wear next to my skin, but I could wear on my head like a hat. Whereas for sweaters and next to the neck scarves, ugh, I just love this. So I thought I would show you wear first. Hats, obviously, they don't get a lot of wear, but I did knit this skein into a different hat first, a giant cabled hat that was too big on me. So this is, it had been knit and then frogged and then knit again. And I guess you can see a little bit of, I don't know what you would call that, not felting, but fuzziness on the inside of the brim, but that's it. And I don't have to reblock this to keep the brim snug, so that's really nice. It drives me nuts when hats wear out, like when the brim stretches out. And here are the mittens, which have gotten quite a bit of use. And as I said, for me, the palm is going to be where you're going to see the most wear on a mitten because that's where I walk my dog. And you can see a little bit of pilling here and then up at the tip. But considering how much I wore these, I don't think it's too bad. And a little bit of pilling here. And these are completely unpilled. Like I've never tried to depill them. There we go. And so the pills that are there, you can just take them off. So, I mean, I've never tried to depill these, but there you go after a winter of hard use. And the back still looks pristine. The leg warmers I knit last autumn. I knit them too big, so they fall down unless I'm wearing them over tight. I'm going to see if I can figure out a solution other than reknitting it. I knit it with calf shaping, and this totally mirrors my calves. As you can see, I have quite curvy calves compared to my ankles, but it turns out a bunch of negative ease makes things stay up when you're walking. So I should have just left it alone. But that's okay because they're sport weight, so reknitting these isn't like reknitting the knee socks that I made. So at least I learned that lesson on sport weight yarn and yarn that I love to knit. So, and I mainly wear the leg warmers. A lot of times I wear them under boots. And this is the woolen spun yarn, and you can see there is some pilling. So, yeah, I guess evaluate that for yourself. It doesn't seem like a lot of pilling to me, but I don't know. I'm not really fussed about pilling. What I don't like is when yarn looks very worn out. I don't know. I'll talk about yarn that I don't like at some point in a yarn review so that you can see what I mean. As for sweaters, my Selkie cardigan, I only finished this in the spring, and I only got to wear it maybe 3 or 4 times before it got too warm. So that's not necessarily a good candidate for showing wear, but my Guernsey-esque jumper I knit last fall, and I wore it at least once a week until it got too hot. So I thought I would show you, and this has not been depilled because I am a lazy person. So this is under the arms. That's a faux gusset, in case you're wondering, because that's how Guernsey jumpers used to be made. Well, I guess it's not faux. It's an actual gusset. And there's a pill there, but the fabric still looks like knit fabric to me. It hasn't gotten all soft and fuzzy. Here's the other arm, underarm. And this is from the outside. I'll show you from the inside in a minute. And then here is the top of the shoulders, which get wear if you wear like a purse or something like that. Well, maybe the camera doesn't think you need to see that. Here, let's try another one. Get the leaf off. I just washed these, so they're clean. So there is the top of the sleeve, and I think this looks in great shape. If you look on the inside, Oh, there's one end that I never bothered to weave in. I always manage to do that on projects with a lot of ends. I always manage to overlook one. So there's the inside of the underarm, and it's a little bit, like right here, you can see that it's felted a little bit, but you don't see it on the outside. And here's the other side, excuse the end. I'll weave that in before I wear it again. So as you can see, once again, it's definitely a little bit felted there, or, you know, just like smushy, I guess. But it doesn't look like that on the outside. So, I mean, no one else is going to be looking at the inside underarm of my sweater. And here's the rest of the inside. Looks really good to me. So I guess I can show you both sweaters, and you can see one that's been worn, I think, 3 times versus one that's been worn a lot. Judge wear by that. Here, we'll do the backs so that you don't have the front of the cardigan confusing you. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is woolen spun versus worsted spun. So as you can see, this one is a little silkier. It doesn't look as heathered, and it doesn't look quite so rustic. And they both feel very soft, but this one feels more like a hug. I'm biased. I love woolen spun yarn. This one feels more poofy, and this one feels more silky. But they both, I've never encountered wool yarn that feels like velvet before. So Cormo is magic in my mind. As far as pricing goes, of course it depends on your budget. Her lace weight yarn, which is 350 yards to 50 grams, starts at $10 a skein, I think, somewhere around there. And the white yarn, the white color is always a little cheaper, and then as you go darker, it gets a little more expensive, so there must be more white sheep, which makes sense. The fingering starts, and then the other ones, it tends to be about $20 for 100 grams. So for me, that means a fingering weight sweater is cheaper because I get more yardage for that. Like more yardage in comparison to how much yardage is going to take me to knit. However, I will say that for me with woolen spun yarn, I like it knit at a looser gauge than you would expect. So even though this is fingering weight, oh, and keep that in mind when I'm talking about wear, I knit this at 5 stitches to the inch, maybe 5.5. It's on my project page, but definitely 5 point something stitches to the inch. And normally I think people knit fingering weight sweaters at 6 to 7 stitches. So I knit a little more loosely, and I think it's held up quite, I mean, beautifully. I'm very proud to continue to wear this sweater. And the other thing that that does is it makes it so you need less yarn. So this sweater is less than 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn. So that means it was like a $40 sweater. But of course I bought 3 skeins. But you know what I mean. So it really depends on the type of sweaters you like to make, because this has quite a bit of negative ease at the bust, and it's shorter. It hits at the very top of my hip because I wanted to be able to wear it with skirts. But yeah, so that gives you an idea of prices. Shipping, it starts, I can't remember because it's been so long. I want to say it starts around $5 or $6, and then the more yarn you buy at once, the less you pay of the shipping, if that makes sense. So I think that for the quality and pleasure and softness of the yarn, it's a steal. Yeah, I love the yarn so much. But of course, some people, their yarn budgets are going to be too small for this. Others, you know, that's just something to work out on your personal level. But yeah, one of the things I love about knitting is that you can find ethically made, very high quality goods for not that much more than the more mass manufactured things. So, yeah. And then finally, oh, Really quickly, there will be a Knits in the Wild photo that I will put right here. As you can see, it's just an accessory thing, and I wore my Soaring Arches beret. I can't remember what I named it. Soaring to the Heavens. There we go. It's a beret that I designed and knit myself for Knitting Pretty's art history knit along, so it's inspired by Gothic architecture, and it's out of Quince & Company Piper in the Abilene colorway. And then I wore my ballerina mitts, which is based on the free HG mitts pattern, and I can't remember the name of the yarn. I got it at my local yarn store. It's like a mass manufactured yarn. It's a bamboo merino blend with a little bit of silk in it. It's made in China. Why can't I remember the name? Panda Silk by Crystal Palace. And then on my feet, but I did not include my socks in the photo, I wore some very beautiful pale purple merino silk socks that I was sent by another knitter when we did the swap. And I sent her the Regia socks that you saw a few episodes ago, and she sent me these like incredibly fancy socks in return. So I planned the outfit around my socks, and it was all gray and purple. You can see more of the outfit on Instagram if you're interested. But yeah, I thought I would try to get back in the habit of taking those photos for you guys. This is a book I got from my library, and it totally influenced my outfit yesterday too, and probably today as well, since I'm wearing some velvet today. It is Fine Things for Plain Occasions by Hunter Hammerson. I was so excited to learn that my library had this book of hers. They also have her first Curls book. They don't have the Curiosity Cabinet books. So Hunter Hammerson is one of those designers who I have admired basically since I began knitting. I follow her blog, and if I were going to be a knitting pattern designer, I would want to be like her. Like, she uses inspiration sources that I also really enjoy. It's part of why I'm not a knitting designer. We already have Hunter Hammerson. But yeah, but I have never actually knit any of her patterns. I'm not really, I think because she does a lot of accessories, and there are so many free sock patterns that I'm like, do I want to pay $6? And then of her books, the one that I would knit everything out of is the Silk Road Socks book, but that's out of print in paper. And it used to be available as a digital book, but I wasn't sure, and then all of a sudden it wasn't even available as a digital book. Okay, so sorry, that was very rambly, but so I've never knit any of her patterns, but I really admire her aesthetic, and it was really nice for me to be able to see what her patterns look like in real life. She self-publishes, and this book is wonderful. My library did cut out the little ribbon bookmark, but other than that, the weight, the smell, the feel of the paper, it is a really lovely book. And so this is one of her more recent books. See, I mean, the type, font, all of it. It's just beautiful as an object, which is nice. This is one of her more recent books, and each pattern is inspired by a passage from a vintage etiquette book, because she has a collection of them, and she has enjoyed reading them since she was young. And the photography is beautiful. The color palette is very muted and feminine, which right up my alley. That's why I was saying that get a lot of inspiration for that. And then what I noticed that I really love, and she includes the quotation, I love this one, which is about women showing their ankles by Naughty Design, is that all of the patterns come in multiple sizes. So for example, the sock pattern that I just showed you the photo of, you can cast on 56, 64, 70, or 80 stitches. That's wonderful. So many socks stop at 64 stitches, and as someone with small feet, and my mother has really tiny feet, I was pretty thrilled that I could knit any of the socks in this book and have them fit either of our feet without having to do any modifications. How great is that? She also, I'm not going to show you her charts, obviously, but her charts are very easy to read. They're fully numbered, both rows and squares, which is a relief. I hate having to like count with my knitting needle. The abbreviations or the symbols are explained on the same page as the chart, so you don't have to flip a lot. And they're at a size that's just, they're nice to read. And in the text of the pattern, she makes it very clear what part of the object you're working on, and it's really very readable. And so this is all accessories and a variety of socks, shawls, mitts, hats, that kind of thing. And I want to knit quite a few of the patterns in here. I'm very excited about it. Let me show you. I want this hat. Ooh, so pretty. I think I could pull off a cloche style. Is it cloche or cloche? Should have been a flapper, but yeah. And it's called Distinct Moral Support. I just love the names of these patterns too. And once again, it's sized. This comes in 1, 2, 3, 4 sizes. I mean, it is not very common for accessory patterns to be sized as much as sweaters are. So I really appreciate that. And I thought that you guys might too. I know that usually I don't tend to review pattern books. I tend to review, I don't know, what else would you call knitting books? Reference books? Maybe that. Versus straight up pattern books. But as someone who has admired her aesthetic but has never bought her patterns, I thought in case you're in a similar boat, you should know that everything comes in multiple sizes, which is really great as far as versatility and seeing if you want to match your gauge and all of that kind of stuff. I love this shawl in case of droughts. Here, there's a better, it's the cover shawl. And as, well, scarf, I guess you could call it a stole. And see, look, woohoo! So that's the kind of neckwear that I would wear. Yeah, let's see. And then at the end of it, she has suggestions for how to read charts, how to read her patterns in general, blocking, all that kind of thing, which I thought was really fun because it was like reading, I don't know, she has a very personal style, you know, you can tell that she has a distinct point of view and that she wrote it herself, and that's the kind of thing I love, where it feels like you're sitting down talking with someone. And more beautiful photographs. So I would say that it's an interesting experience for me looking at patterns in a book versus looking at all the patterns available in a book on Ravelry, because many of the patterns that I'd seen on Ravelry, I thought, maybe. And then when I saw them in the book from multiple angles, she's very good about that, making sure that you can see it from different perspectives and stuff. I thought I definitely want to knit that, which is good to know for me because I tend to, as I said, not buy books that are specific patterns. The library, I borrow them from the library, but the library usually only has the big ones like Interweave or whatever. I'm pleasantly surprised that they had an independent published one. So yeah, if you are at all interested in the book and you want to knit enough of the patterns to justify the price, if you buy it directly from her website, you get a free copy of the ebook too. But I'll just say that if you're like me and you really enjoy objects from an aesthetic level, and you cannot ever imagine being the kind of minimalist who, you know, lives in a shiny chrome place and everything is digitalized, if you appreciate paper and that kind of thing, then this book is very beautiful. I'm really hoping that she reissues Silk Road Socks, because I would buy a copy of that in a heartbeat. And yeah, all of these designs have very sweet little details. But none of them seem like they're going to be incredibly complicated to knit, you know. I think it's a good balance between too simple and too complex. She seems to be in that middle room. So that will be my review. Obviously, I haven't knit any of the patterns from it yet, but I think the next pair of socks I'm going to cast on, I'm going to pick one from this book to use with some stash yarn. And that is the episode. I hope that it works, this new format. I'm not sure how I feel about talking all about projects one week and then all about the other knitting stuff the next week, but it seemed the easiest way to break it up. So once again, I would appreciate any kind of feedback. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can leave comments on Instagram or the Ravelry group or message me. I'm the Charm of It over there. Wait, I meant YouTube. Sorry, you can leave comments on YouTube at the video below. On Ravelry, I'm the Charm of It for either messaging or commenting in my group. Feel free to do either. I love hearing from you. On Instagram, I'm also the Charm of It, and I'm quite active there, so I will definitely see if you comment there. Sometimes I don't see when people tag me. I'm not sure why. But yeah, so if I don't reply to a photo that you posted that you tagged me at, try to like direct message it to me or something, and then I see it. But I do always see comments on my photos. And that's also the best way to keep up with my knitting if you want to see how it's growing, because I tend to post a couple photos a day there of knitting. And I also post more pet photos if you're a fan of Thistle and Moth, and books as well. So quite active on Instagram. And I think that's everything for show notes. Since this is a regular episode, you'll find them on my blog. And I had a great time. I hope that you guys did too. I'll see you next week for in-depth talk about my works in progress. Bye.